Hi, everyone. It's Wednesday, my dudes. I mean, if you know, you know. It's kind of a dated Vine. I know that old, old piece of social media and video taking stuff. It's like, yeah, Vines. I'm dating myself there. I'm an old man. However, it is Wednesday. It's June 10th, half or third way through the month already. I feel like I start all these videos out in my lot. I should change it up, right? I should just do it in the back of a car or maybe like speeding down the highway. But today, I am prepping for an appointment. I got a couple. One's just a test drive, but one is an appointment for a lease end. And that was kind of like, you know what? It made me want to go over or make a video just kind of going over lease. Like, what is it? Why would anyone ever want to do it? And maybe is it right for you or is it not right for you? Just kind of answer some questions. I feel like lease had a really negative stigma on it for a long period of time. And then anytime I do ever bring up a lease with customers that I'm working with, it's always like, oh, but I won't own the car. And that's like the number one thing. I'm never going to own the car. Which, I mean, ultimately is true. But as I said, there's a lot of positives and then there are some negatives. So what is a lease, first off? Well, basically, it's an alternative buying method. It's a way to get into a brand new car. So instead of just outright financing the entirety of the loan and buying the car outright after like a 5, 6, 7 year period, average is 5, or it has been traditionally. I've been seeing them jump up to like 6 and 7. It's a way to purchase a car with a contracted agreement that you are going to return it after a set period of time. And it's usually like 3 years or 4 years or 3.5, like 40 months, 60 months, or 36 months, 42 months, things like that. So it's a set period of time. So what happens is the lender, it still works out just like it normally would if you were buying a car and financing, right? You're finding a car, you're agreeing on a price, you're getting a loan for a certain amount of money, and then you're paying that off in monthly installments. But with a lease, a lender, for us it's Subaru Motor Finance or Chase Bank, let's say you have a $50,000 car you're looking at, right? Let's say you're like, bam, I want that gray one right there, that Forester. It's like, okay. I don't think that's a $50,000 one, but yeah, that's not a $50,000 one at all. But okay, well, here we go. So you're like, bam, I've got this one right here. That's a hybrid. It's a touring, so it's the top trim level and it's hybrid. So it's probably priced around like $49,000. So $50,000. Let's round up. The bank is saying, well, let's see, if you are going to do it for 36 months, 3 years, and you plan on driving 10,000 miles a year. At the end of 3 years, it's going to be used by 3 years, and it's going to have 30-ish thousand miles on it. The bank will estimate the value of that car, if we were to resell it, at X amount of dollars. And that's called the residual. It's normally about 50 to 53% of the MSRP of the car, or the value of the car. And so whatever the number or the value that it dropped, that's depreciation. That's what you end up being responsible for. So again, $50,000 car, the bank is saying, you know what, let's say they cut it in half and they're like, we think after 3 years with 30,000-ish miles, it's going to be worth $25,000. You are now taking a loan because you're paying down the depreciation. So your responsibility is $25,000. So, hey, you want to get into a Forester for 3 years? You can finance the entirety. You're paying $50,000 plus interest over a 3-year period or a 5-year period or a 7-year period. But hey, you want to get into a brand new Forester with all the bells and whistles, that exact one, for 3 years for $25,000? All right, so you can usually, depending on how long you are normally financing a car for, you can usually get into a car for less than you would normally pay monthly than if you were financing it. Now, of course, that thing at the end is when you finance a car, your last monthly payment means it triggers the bank to send you the title, because now once you make that final payment and you pay off the entirety of the loan, you now own that car. It is now yours to do whatever you want with. You can drive it into the dirt, you can sell it, you can trade it, you can soup it up, you can do whatever. Right? Obviously, with a lease, you make that agreement to turn it back in or to do something at the end of 3 years. On average, it's 3 years. But at the end of your agreement, your lease terms, your lease contract. So why would someone do that? Well, again, you can get into a brand new car. every 3-ish years on a kind of a cycle where you can then get into it for less than you normally would pay on financing. Another thing is you're covered under warranty, so you don't have to worry about like extended warranties or like trying to worry about the longevity and life of your car because, well, manufacturer's warranties usually cover 3 years, 36,000. How long's your lease? Well, it's 3 years and 30 to 36,000, depending if you're going 10,000, 12,000 miles per year. So, hey, you're covered under warranty the entire time. So you really never need to buy into that extra wrap packages at the end in finance. Another thing is you gap insurance. So the way our leases work is at the end of the 3 years, you're essentially kind of think it like this. You're trading your car back in, and you're trading your car in for an agreed upon amount that will pay off the remainder of your car. So that's kind of a good way of looking at it. It's like you're just paying the depreciation and then you're trading your car back in for the value you all agreed that it was going to be worth. Well, so if you pay $25,000 on that hypothetical 50 grand car, at the end of the 3 years, if you trade it back in and the market has tanked, just, it's the reverse of what happened during COVID. It's just like no one's buying cars. No one cares about that car. The value of the brand died, whatever. So your car's not worth crap. Doesn't matter. You get to trade it back in and say, hey, we agreed. We agreed on this. And you estimated, Chase, you estimated it was going to be worth $25,000. It's not my fault. You were wrong. So you just get to walk away from that. So that's a lot of risk that you're not taking. Think of if you finance, right? If you finance a car, 3 years goes by and all of a sudden you realize your car's not worth crap. Like Cybertrucks are kind of getting hit really hard right now. People are buying them or bought them when they're really expensive and then they're just not worth nearly as much as they bought them for. You don't get that option, right? 3 years into your finance, of a 5-year finance, you try to trade it back, you're at risk of whatever you have left on the loan, plus whatever the market value is of your car. And if your car's not worth anything, no one's buying it, then you're going to be very, what we call upside down. You're not going to be very valuable. So with leasing, you don't assume that risk. Right? That risk is all assumed by the bank. And they're making the estimate that in 3 years your car's going to be worth this amount of money, not you. On the flip side, if the market goes in your favor, right? The bank error in your favor, if anyone plays Monopoly, let's say you pay for 2 years, 10 months, so you got 2 months left on your lease, but the value of your car, if it were to be traded in, is now higher than what the bank estimated. Well, that's equity. That's when you build equity into your car. And for those are I love those customers because they get to come back early and they say, hey, I've got like $1,000 equity in my car because the last 3 payments, I've surpassed that trade-in value, that market value. And so we do an appraisal on their car and we go, yeah, you kept up to date with maintenance records, you kept it clean, you kept it under the mileage agreement. So yeah, your car is worth more. $25,000? No, your car is worth $27,000. So they get $2,000 equity and they just take that, roll that into another car that they can finance, that they want to just start another lease payment on. They just get to use that, and it's awesome because in those cases, I have people who come from like a Forester, because Foresters are retaining their value like crazy right now. They'll come from a Forester, they'll build like $2,000 equity, then they'll jump into another Forester. They can keep the same trim. So if they go from a premium to a premium, all of a sudden their monthly payment will just get decimated. And it's like, hey, you were paying $300 a month, now you're paying $230, right, per month for a car that's brand new and no money down. We just used your equity and rolled it into this car. Or they'll be like, hey, you know what, since I've got that equity, let me go ahead and jump up to the Sport. Let me jump up to the Limited. Let me get into a higher trim level, just because now I can, and keep the payments exactly the same, but now I get more bells and whistles and features. So lease has a lot of positives. Biggest negative on it, right? You don't own the car. Yeah, that is true. So if your plan, so that's one thing. If you're working with me and you're going like, I don't know which one's right for me, I'm going to ask you flat out, what's your overall long-term plan with the car? Is it to just drive it until you are ready to turn it back in? Leasing might be an option for you. It might be something you want to look at. Is your plan to have it, and then would you want to give it away to children, grandchildren, friends, family, or sell it to them, like help someone out? Obviously, leasing's not going to work for you, and I'm not going to even try to talk you into leasing at that point. Do you want to run it into the dirt? Well, then obviously you can't lease. You need to own your car in order to drive it for 15 years until it breaks down on you. So, as I said, very niche group of people is leasing appropriate for. There's also a group of people, I don't really like to do this, but I always will bring it up as an option. But it's where it could start to get kind of, I'm not going to say predatory, but could be where someone's like, hey, I can't afford this car I want to get into. I can't afford the monthly payments for financing. And so you say, hey, you could lease it, because as I said, leasing usually ends up getting you lower monthly payments. However, I don't like to do that, because obviously if someone's like, I'm struggling to, or they're finding it hard to make those payments trying to buy a car, I don't want to kind of just do this thing where it could be taking advantage of them, going like, hey, we could still get you in that car for 3 years for lower payments that you could afford, when I know that in my head they're not going to be saving up money for 3 years down the road when they need to turn that car back in. I just don't want to have that risk of being like predatory and taking advantage of them. So I will still bring it up, but for the most part, if someone's struggling to make monthly payments and they're not hitting their numbers and their goal is to own a car, then we just have the wrong car. Then I say, hey, listen, I understand you want this car, but the numbers, I don't want to do that to you. We need to get you into something a little bit more reasonable, more practical, things like that. It happens, and that's not a conversation a lot of salespeople will have, because it's like, to them it's just sell a car. Oh, you can, you'll struggle, but you could make it, right? Or maybe if you don't go out to eat at McDonald's every once a week, you can kind of save a little bit. I don't do that. That's crap. That's a bunch of bullshit. I don't do that stuff. For me, it's this: if you're struggling, or if you're trying to push your budget to get into a car, I'm not going to throw out leasing. I mean, if you ask me, then I'll tell you about leasing. But I'm not going to say like, hey, leasing's an option, I can still get you into it, and then just like hide the fact in 3 years you're going to be in the same situation you are now, or possibly worse, because maybe you don't have any money saved because over 3 years you spent it. So that is one of the negatives, is like, yes, you're not going to own your car. Now, what I usually will ask people is like, what do you do with your cell phone? Do you have a cell phone plan? Do you have like an iPhone or a Samsung or something that you upgrade every few years? You're basically leasing. So if you do that, if you have an iPhone, you're like, yeah, every 3 years I go and I get the newest one. Bam, that's it. If you get into that mentality with your car, you're leasing. You're leasing your phone, you're just upgrading it every few years. You're leasing your car, making a car payment, upgrading it every few years. And a lot of times when I bring that up, people will be like, oh my gosh, I never actually looked at it like that, but you're right. Leasing is kind of like just constantly every few years upgrading your phone to the next newest model. What was that? So that is one way I try to, like, as I said, get people over like how leasing works and get over that anxiety of not owning their car. When you're financing, you don't technically own your car until you make that last payment on the plan. So you're kind of like in a false you're kind of like in this false state of mind when you're like, I own the car, but you're still making monthly payments on it. So until you make that last monthly payment on your finance, you're almost in the same situation you are with leasing. Yeah. But yeah, people who finance, it's like, it's a traditional way of buying a car. It's still a fantastic way. It just depends on what your overall goal is. I would say this: if you find yourself falling into a habit of buying a car and then 4 years, 5 years, maybe even 6 years later, you turn it back in because you still want the car to have some value for its trade, you might be one of the prime people that should at least look at leasing. If you are someone who tries to trade in their car while it still has value, but you've been traditionally financing all the time, maybe look at leasing. Yeah, it's every few years you're going to have to go in and do the same process. Maybe that's, 5 years is what you're comfortable with, is every 5 years getting a new car. But you're going to retain money, you're going to retain value overall. If you are just constantly like, yeah, I just paid off my car, I'm going to trade it in now, your car has actually lost a lot more value in the end than if you were just to pay depreciation on cars by leasing, with the chance of building equity into a car. So if you're one of those people, if you're like, yeah, my car's 5 years old, so it's ready for a new one, it's time for a new one, I usually do this. If I hear that from you, that's when I'll be like, have you ever considered leasing? Like, because you're losing a lot of money as far as value goes. you're paying a lot for a car just for the moment you pay it off to then try to trade it back in on value. It's like, would you consider leasing? Like, that might be a better overall long-term thing for you, as long as you get in the habit of driving every 3 years or a few years, coming in and doing this process again. So yeah, that's kind of like my target audience for like, how do I bring up leasing? And who do I think is appropriate for leasing? So again, it's not like the people who are struggling to get into a car, and so I'm trying to find them an alternative way to get lower monthly payments. That's kind of predatory. I don't do that. Yeah. So those are the people I talk to. But that's what leasing is. So again, bank makes an estimate of what the value will be after 3 years, or whatever your term limit is, with however many miles you agree to. You then take a loan for the depreciation of that car, and you have your monthly payments over the term limit, whatever you agree to. There's a lot of offers you can get into where it's like 1.9, 2.9% financing, so you don't even have to like go to the full extent of like the 5%, 6%, which is kind of the average right now. And then other than that, you're driving the car, you're paying the car. If you're worried about mileage, you can pay for miles. Like, if you are someone who knows you drive way more than you should on average, if you're driving 15,000 miles a year, just say, I need 15,000 miles a year. If you're someone who, I don't know, does it for DoorDash or some crap like that, and you're like, no, I drive like 20,000 miles a year. Again, you can pay extra for miles if you know how many miles you drive. Average person drives anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000, somewhere in there. So if you have a long commute, go for 12,000. If you have a short commute, go for 8,000. If you just want to stay in the middle, average 10,000. So not a big deal. So the mileage thing, you just kind of have to know your driving habits. People usually don't have like sudden changes in driving habits where they're like, oh, I normally drive 8,000 miles. For the last 10 years, I've driven 8,000 miles, but now that I'm leasing, I think I'm going to drive 19,000 miles. That's not usually what happens. Creatures of habit, right? We are creatures of habit. So yeah, mileage, not really a big deal. As I said, warranty, you're covered under lease. Not owning your car, that's basically the biggest thing. At the end of the day, at the end of your lease term, you will have to make a choice. Turn it in, buy it outright, trade it get into a new lease, or try to find someone to buy the lease out from you. Do that finance. So let me know what you think, man. I personally, I lease my car. I use it as a commuter just to get to work and back. That's it. I'm not using it for much of anything else. My wife, we're currently leasing just because her car took a crap. So we're kind of in that situation where it's like, we're going to probably lease to own, but maybe not. Maybe just keep leasing. While I work at a car dealership, and I get, kind of like the insider scoop of when deals are happening, and I can just take advantage of those offers the second they pop up. So we are leasing, and for me, it's going to work out. I'll probably lease an electric car next. And that's another thing, electric cars. People primarily lease electric cars because the technology changes so fast. I think 3 years ago, the Solterra, not the best car. Charging times were crap. The overall range was pretty low as far as it's a good car, but like if you compare it to Tesla's, Bolts, any other EVs, it falls behind a lot. But in 3 years, now we're still partnered with Toyota, but then it's like we have the Solterra that's comparable to the BZ, right? We actually have a very solid car. We have Trail Seekers and Uncharteds that people are just fighting tooth and nail to get. And that's just in 3 years' time. So if you bought a Solterra, right, now you're still paying that off in like a 5-year finance. But if you leased a Solterra, 3 years ago, right now you're coming back out like, boom, here's a new Solterra, and here's all the new advanced technology and benefits you get from buying it. And so people are like, oh my gosh, I gotta jump in on that. So tell me what you think below. I know this was a long one, but I said leasing, it's like I like to go over what it is, how it can be advantageous to you, how it can be detrimental to you. Should you be thinking about it? Are you kind of the appropriate person and customer for leasing? Or, maybe should you avoid it like the plague? Let me know what you think. Send me a message. Leave a comment. Yeah, talk to you later.